I am Michael J, and today we discuss what has created an autocratic republic in 2025 led by Donald J. Trump. The confluence of events and people that have created this Christian nationalist, white supremacist, and immigration, originally disguised as border strengthening, has become racial profiling within the interior of the United States of America with the immigration population. So number one concern and what has created Trump, you have to understand how Trump is. First of all, Trump is illiterate, does not understand cause and effect, but he's driven by two things: greed and power. And understand, in the motions of his first divorce, on his bedside table was Mein Kampf. And of particular importance is chapter 3, 6, and 12. Because even though Trump is an illiterate, does not understand cause and effect, by reading chapters 3, 6, and 12, as is the case with 100% of the human beings, whatever you read, whatever you see, whatever you hear, is recorded within the conscious or through this conscious mind illusory complex to the unconscious and subconscious part of your mind. This is how things work. So we'll get back to Mein Kampf and how this influenced, but you understand the motivation, greed and power of Trump. You see that in his actions and behaviors. So what gave rise to this? Well, we've got Russell Vought here in number one. Pretty much the guy that orchestrated Project 2025. Ran the OMB first term, is running the OMB in the administration second term. But you have to understand what motivates this man. In May 2020, when they're outgoing, they thought they'd win, but they're outgoing. Russell Thurlow Vought, elected to break the OMB's longstanding practice of publishing updated economic forecasts. Why give people the truth when you can obfuscate the truth? Citing disruption caused by the pandemic. So on September 4, 2020, at the President Trump's direction, he published an OMB directive or memo instructing federal agencies to stop all training on critical race theory or white privilege, along with any other training or what he considered propaganda efforts that teach or suggest either that the United States is an inherently racist or evil country. Well, that's a misnomer to a degree, because you had slavery in the past. Racism has been an issue. And, that was based on the slavery, the Underground Railroad to North America, Canada, because of slavery. And that any race or ethnicity is inherently racist or evil. And Vaught's memo further directed that agencies begin to identify legal avenues to cancel contracts or otherwise divert taxpayer dollars being spent on such training, which they consider engenders division and resentment within the federal workforce. And you've seen this now in the present administration in 2025, where DOGE and previous Congress monies that were set aside have been abused and misused under Emergency Powers Acts based on executive orders of the President of the United States. What's further compounded that is the Christian nationalist movement and far-right Republican influence that has put into power a United States of America's Supreme Court that is influenced strongly by 6 out of the 9 justices. You also have to understand another thing as well about Voigt. He also, even though he was outgoing and Biden won the election, he stymied access to the Biden administration because he stated that OMB staff are working on this administration's policies and will do so until the administration's final day in office. As well, you have to understand Trump put in place in the Pentagon and various other bureaus certain people loyal to him when he's outgoing. He knew he had lost the election, but he was outgoing, but he did this nonetheless. So Russell Voigt, big part of Project 2025. So you have to understand what's going on now in American 2025. Christian nationalism. It's in the highest court of the land. White supremacy and immigration, which started as borders, securing borders, has become racial profiling and the removal of immigration, people considered not of a nuclear background of the United States, for removal. And this is what's happening right now. The important players right now in this, Donald Trump is the vehicle, confluence of events, various different factors, made him the perfect vehicle for all this to come together. Christian nationalists, white supremacy, and racial profiling. So, Stephen Miller, back in 2002, I think he was maybe 17 years of age at that time, or thereabouts. And he comes from a Russian Jewish background, his great-great-grandfather. And also you have to understand there was Jewish cleansing in prior to Moldova, where Moldova is now. Going back prior to that, it had a different name. But this, through his great-great-grandfather, left an impression on Stephen Miller as well. So you've got this Russian Jewish influence as well. So here, in 2002, he ran for student announcer. The bottom line is, he called for Santa Monica to institute the Pledge of Allegiance, which is a demand that the school complied with, and for the school's culture to embrace inclusive patriotism in contrast to multiculturalism. So back in 2002, that angry young man wanted the school culture to embrace inclusive patriotism in contrast to multiculturalism. So, when was he born? 1985. Yeah. 17 years old. He's already thinking like that, and he has not changed the way he's thinking. So we've got Stephen Miller, then the Heritage Foundation, goes back to 1973. Heritage Foundation, run by Kevin Roberts, another guy that was a consultant has Catholicism in his background, which is another form of Christianity. From Texas, actually worked with Greg Abbott. So now this is why you have that Greg Abbott influence to provide the National Guard to other states under Trump's direction. Because Kevin Roberts is the major person behind Project 2025. And that's just the way it is. See their influences? Goes back to 73 Nixon. Reagan's when it really got traction in the Reagan administration. And that's where the personnel of policy became a major impetus under Reagan's administration. See George Bush Sr., Clinton administration, George Bush Jr., Obama, right up to Trump. First Trump, and definitely it's everything that's running the second Trump administration now at the present. So Kevin Roberts here, president of the Heritage Foundation, major contributor to Project 2025, its compilation, how it's structured, how it's implemented. So Roberts in September 2024, September 24, 2024, had written a book. The book was called Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. Now, it was supposed to come out before the election of 2024, but they put it off till after the election of 2024 for obvious reasons. In the book, Kevin Roberts writes that many of America's institutions need to be burned. Including among those to be incinerated are the FBI, New York Times, along with Ivy League colleges. Harvard's prime example of how Ivy League colleges have been targeted. The FBI is another example where loyalists like Kash Patel are in a position, and Dan Bongino. So the book even had a foreword by J.D. Vance in August 2024. So that's why they postponed the book. But Project 2025, Roberts has been called the chief architect of Project 2025. Now understand, Project 2025 started during Reagan's term. That's where it really started kicking in. And that the maxim during the Reagan era was personnel is policy. So what is personnel is policy? The phrase personnel is policy means that the people appointed to key positions in an organization ultimately determine its direction and actions. Their individual values, priorities, skills, and even personal ambitions have a greater impact on the organization's real-world policy outcome than its official rules or stated goals. So the concept is mostly applied in a political context, particularly to executive branch appointments. But what you have to understand is the appointment of loyalists. And that's where the loyalist position, not about getting the right people or the best people for the job, for the American people. It's a matter of getting the loyalist in a position that is loyal to the Supreme Leader, Donald J. Trump, who's going to execute the ambitions of Project 2025, which encompasses also the Christian nationalist movement, white supremacy, and immigration. Knowing that immigration started off as border policy, but that was a mask for its real implementation. And you've seen it with ICE, the way they've targeted people of race in certain cities, especially blue states in the United States of America. So that's how that came into play. Trumpism. What's Trumpism? The ideology behind Donald Trump and his political base. MAGA. Make America Great Again. Compromises ideologies such as right-wing populism, right-wing anti-globalism, national conservatism, and neo-nationalism. A liberal, authoritarian movement with autocratic beliefs. And that's what you're seeing. That's why you have the No Kings protests. Now, Leonard Leo, which is the Federalist Society, was able to get the Christian nationalist movement ensconced. The Christian nationalist movement and right-wing Republican movement firmly established in the Supreme Court of the United States of America. He assisted with getting Clarence Thomas, John Roberts, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett confirmed and sitting on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. This is why you have a slant now where 6 out of the 9 justices have changed the way they act with their rulings. And this is the first time since the Republic of the United States of America was formed that a president, sitting president, Donald Trump, required the Supreme Court of the U.S. to give him an immunity clause to act. Never needed before by any president of the United States. So later on, as typical of any autocrat, Trump said in a social media post, he denigrated Leo. He stated, I was new to Washington, and it was suggested I use the Federalist Society as a recommending source on judges. I did so openly and freely. So he's cast Leo as a bad person now. Leo's not in a position of authority with the Federalist Society anymore. And now you have to understand why you got guys like Mick Mulvaney, Mitch McConnell, John Bolton, diehard Republicans no matter what. Won't vote for Trump, but then they'll vote for Trump. Won't vote for Trump, will vote for Trump. If you watch Mick Mulvaney's recent interview with Mehdi Hasan, it's going to be amazing how the ego just pushes back and he convinces himself that he wasn't going to vote for Trump, thought January 6th, the insurrection was bad, said he would not vote for Trump, but yet he voted for Trump. So John Bolton, more important for him to get a book out there than do the right thing. Mitch McConnell, more important for him to be in a position of power instead of doing the right thing. And these are the confluence of events that have helped to lead to where you are right now in October 2025. Let's move on to, what do we got here? It's just more of the Leonard Leo. So, Christian nationalism versus Christianity. Allegiance versus patriotism. The distinction is often drawn between patriotism, a healthy love for one's country, and nationalism, which demands a supreme allegiance to the nation state above all other commitments, including religious ones. In order to do that, you put into power key positions, bureaucrats, government positions. You gut those government bureaucrats first and foremost, anything that'll stand in your way, and put loyalists into those positions. So the concept has received heightened attention in recent years, especially in the U.S. and other parts of the world, due to its influence on political movements and its role in events such as the January 6, 2021 Capitol insurrection. And it's amazing. January 6, 2021, you had an insurrection. Trump's sitting president doesn't call in the National Guard, but he says Nancy Pelosi was the one that had to call it in. Meanwhile, October 2025, Hakeem Jeffries is not calling the National Guard in, but Trump is, in order to go to Chicago and Oregon, Portland, and California. So who's telling you the truth here? You people got to wake up. Defining Christian nationalism. Some people may conflate. What's conflate mean? It's when you make or take opinion and make it into a fact when no fact really exists to support that opinion. So some people conflate Christian nationalism and Christianity because they both use the symbols and language of Christianity, such as a Bible, a cross, and worship songs. But Christian nationalism uses the veneer of Christianity to advance its own aims under the mask of Jesus and various other commandments of the Bible. What you have to remember is what is really an interesting how history sees things. There was a movie called The Ten Commandments, a guy by the name of Charlton Heston. Many days up in the mountain, walks down with these tablets in hand, and there's Edward G. Robinson with a gold statue. What do you have in the White House? Gold everywhere. Who loves gold? Donald J. Trump. Isn't that ironic? So Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation, former CEO of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And from that Texas Policy Foundation, he was greatly involved in Catholicism, but was considered a cowboy of Catholicism there, a breakaway hybrid of Catholicism. So this is where you have these Christian evangelicals that have been around the presidents for many, many decades. And Catholicism, a hybrid of Catholicism, which has morphed into what we call Christian nationalism, which influences the highest court in the land of the United States, influence the administration of the United States of America, influence the Department of Justice in the United States of America by way of loyalists. You gotta say, what's going on? So this is why Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott's got no problem sending the National Guard to wherever Trump wants to any other state. So there's Kevin Roberts' history in Texas. We've seen that. Now here's the important thing that you have to understand. What influences Trump on a subconscious and unconscious level? First of all, you know his motivating factor is greed, and power. Nothing else is more important to them than just money and power. There's a guy that never was a mobster, but he was a wannabe mobster since he got into business in New York City on his own, and he had to deal with mobsters in order to develop properties. Furthermore, I know the lawyer that put him in position under Putin to launder money for the Russians, to launder money for the Colombian drug cartel, Mexican drug cartels. This is why the Panama Papers, Pandora Papers, Paradise Papers, there's so much money was being laundered, and this is the hold that Putin has on Trump. It was originally put in place through Boris Yeltsin. So let's look at the first marriage of Donald Trump. His bedside table, he had a book. And here, this book, which governs his unconscious and subconscious minds. You understand, everybody 95% of the time is operating from the subconscious, unconscious mind, through the left and right frontal lobes into the upper cortex. And that's just the fact how the human being operates. Once you understand that, you have to consciously change the programming. Nonetheless, Chapter 3. The young subject of German nationality is obligated to undergo the schooling prescribed for every German. Let's further go on. So physical exercises, the training in the army as general, it must embrace every individual German and train him in the field of military service, made possible by his physical and intellectual ability. Thereupon, after completion of his military duty, the right of citizenship is most solemnly bestowed on the irreproachable, healthy young man. It is the most precious document for his whole life on earth. Yikes. With it, he enters upon all the rights of citizen and partakes of all his advantages. For the state must make a sharp distinction between those who, as national comrades, are the cause and bearer of its existence and of its greatness, and those who only take up residence within a state as earning elements. So there you go. That's Chapter 3, Subjects and Citizens. Guess what? Everything you read is stored and you operate from it, from the subconscious and unconscious minds. That's Chapter 3. Chapter 6. The destructive work of the Marxists. So this is where the leftist, the enemy from within, comes into play. This is why Trump states it over and over and over again. This is why he's had the rallies he's had. Even at Madison Square Garden, states certain things. Because the power of the word has a ripple effect. And as I stated before, it becomes part of your subconscious and unconscious mind. So the destructive work of the Marxists and the poison of enemy propaganda. And furthermore, it states, and yet we had not even the right to complain. This is where you're being manipulated right now, in real time. What had the bourgeoisie done to put a halt to this frightful disintegration? To oppose it and open the way to truth by a better and more thorough enlightenment? ? So that leftist enemy within, as stated here, why would you go there? Because that's the enemy within, when there's another way that is a more enlightened state. This is what's going on a subconscious and unconscious level from this guy Trump. He does it without compunction. If you don't understand cause and effect, you react without compunction. And this is why, there's such a real problem with Ukraine. One day, I'm going to give you tomahawks. No, after I talk to Putin, I'm not. It's all a game. You're just being used as pawns. You just don't realize it. So, furthermore, the question of war guilt had to be cleared up, and cleared up in the sense of historic truth. And this is where you go from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. This is the path it's leading you on. The question of war guilt had to be cleared up. This is how they clear it up. The Department of Defense is now the Department of War. Get rid of the people that are in your way, that stand up for righteousness and morality, and actual legal covenants that have been agreed upon worldwide, and replace them with loyalists. This is what happens. You're going down that slippery slope right now. And the question of war guilt had to be cleared up, and cleared up in the sense of historic truth, that our movement should transmit to the broadest masses knowledge of the peace treaty was the premise for the future success of the movement. So, because the peace treaty, after the First World War, that's used because you've created a knowledge that the peace treaty was bad for the people. You're going to create a war to change the way the people will live and feel. That's where the Make America Great Again movement comes from. This is why the Department of Defense is no longer the Department of Defense, Department of War, replaced with a different credo. The unfortunate other thing is you're setting it up very similar. You're taking the template from the way Russia operates, the way that your military in the United States operates. The erosion is happening bit by bit. It'll be in there deep. Its tentacles will be in there deep long before you realize it. So, this further states we had to form a front against it and engrave ourselves forever in the minds of men as an enemy of this treaty, so that later, when the harsh reality of this treacherous frippery would be revealed in its naked hate. So, they create a problem, they provide a solution, and then they deny, and say they're looking out for your best interests. The recollection of our position at that time would win us confidence. Being told to you right here. You see it in real time, you're living it right now. So, I'm going to end with one of the most important statements here. It must not become a servant of the masses, but their master. So they're influencing you from within in order to change your ideology from servant of the masses to servant of the master, their master of the ideology. That's what it is. What do we call this? The significance of the spoken word. See it in the rallies, you see it everywhere. You see how it's incorporated, Project 2025, put loyalists in place. Here's the other part. If the trade union movement is important, it is clear that National Socialism must take a position on it, not only from the purely theoretical, but from the practical viewpoint as well. Yet to be sure, the how of it is harder to clarify. That's the most important thing you have to remember. The how to it is the most important. The trade union question. You know, Trump doesn't like trade unions. So this is the template to break the trade unions in a different way, to take the trade union from being loyal to the masses to being loyal to their master. And that's through the spoken word, and it starts slowly. And this is why you change the makeup of the bureaucracy of government and every other department and every bureaucrat and replace them with loyalists. And this is how they're working. So this is Trump in a nutshell. This is what you have going on in the United States of America. And what more can I say? You got a decision to make, and you can't let this go. You can let this go on. It's not going to make America better. It's definitely not going to make the world better. Trying to apply something that did not work 100 or 150 years ago to the present makes no sense. Why don't you redefine the framework of what needs to be done to go away, let go of pain and suffering, and create a compassionate, harmonious, abundant experience for everyone. And it's really as simple as that. So, how am I going to finish this off? Very easily. Thanks for watching. Love and peace to everyone. Talk to you all soon. Ciao for now.